evening and welcome to the Hedberg Public Library. I'm Jean Yeomans, the Adult Services Coordinator here at the library, and I'd like to welcome everyone who's come out from the rain. Our speaker this evening is Erin Conway, a former Peace Corps volunteer who will share her memories of her time in Guatemala. Following her presentation, Erin will demonstrate the ancient art of backstrap weaving, which is practiced in China, Japan, Latin America, South America, and Erin, of course, will explain more. So please join me in welcoming Erin Conway.
Good evening, thank you for coming. If we were in Guatemala, I perhaps would say buenas noches, or if we were in the Mayan village where I worked, I could say shok'an, or welcome. So today I will be speaking about weaving on the backstrap loom. I have previously spoken about my experiences in Guatemala. I will give a brief introduction. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the village of Santa Catarina, Palopo, in the country of Guatemala for 3 years. I worked in a program called environmental education, primarily in the 2 elementary schools in the village where I lived. And since then, I have been working in Guatemala with the teachers and the community in a community library and literacy project. So Guatemala, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is to the south of Mexico. I have my Guatemalan ABC book. Guatemala is a very small country. It's about the size of Tennessee. However, in that small space, there is great ecological as well as great cultural diversity. Guatemala has many different microclimates that contribute to a great range of plant and animal species. Along the coast, it's very, very hot. Also in the north, in the jungle area that's up against the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, it's very hot and humid. Many people associate that weather with Guatemala. However, as you move inland and up into the Western Highlands, it starts to be much more temperate. The village that I worked in is about a mile high above sea level, and dry heat, very comfortable in the evenings. And then as you progress even higher in elevation, it's actually cold. Water freezes at night. And it's not the type of tropical image you might have when you think, oh, Guatemala, south, warm. Also, great cultural diversity. Guatemala is a Spanish-speaking nation. However, they have 22 Mayan languages that are still spoken today. There is also a Caribbean language, which is called Garifuna, which is a small settlement called Livingston on the coast that was founded by Africans. So you'll see quite a large range. Today, I'm primarily going to speak about weaving, and the weaving that I learned was in the village of Santa Catarina, Palopo. That is the village that I worked in. It is a village of about 3,000 people. It's on the shores of Lake Atitlan, because Lake Atitlan is a tourist destination. Lake Atitlan is a lake that was formed by volcanic eruption. There are 3 volcanoes around it, and then a series of villages are situated around the lake. Several of those villages speak Kachikal. Other villages speak Sutuhil, and there's somewhat of a mixing between the two in a couple of the villages. The Kachikal varies even from one village to the next. So even though there is a standard, there is an Academy of Mayan Languages, there's still variation. The village is, as I said, roughly 3,000 people. Primarily, it was a fishing village. However, today, more and more they make money off of tourism. And part of that is the weaving that they practice, because it is such a beautiful textile that they're creating. So traje, as it's called, or traditional dress, is an identifier of people who are indigenous Maya. In one book I read, there was a fact that said there were over 150 different designs. I'm sure that many different people can make arguments for less or more depending on how you might classify it between villages, but it's still a great number, and the designs vary depending on the way they are woven. Some designs are actually reversible, like there's a design that you can use on the front and the back the same. Some designs are woven in the style that I will show you later. Others will weave a plain piece and then actually embroider on top of it, as we are familiar with a needle and thread. So you can identify where someone is from based on the clothing that you would see them wearing. Now, this, that's not always going to be true. There's obviously a fashion element to it, and there are women who really like a wapil, which is the term for the blouse, from another village, and they'll wear it. They might buy one and they'll wear it, even though that's not where they're from. However, as a general rule, you can see definitely within a village that the women will be dressed primarily the same, similar colors and similar designs. However, that's not to say it can't shift. Santa actually began as a red, just because of the dyes that were available in the years and years and years ago. About 20 years ago, these blues and purples became available, and from the stories that I've heard women tell, partly because they liked it and partly because they realized it was attractive to possible people they could sell it to, they shifted. However, the red still is used during more traditional ceremony. You'll see the red instead. So I'm going to move over here just so I can show the rest of what tri-head looks like. So what you'll have, and you're so close, what you'll have is the wapil, which is woven. It can be wool or cotton, and there's also, I think, a synthetic blend that's called lemon that is much finer. It's more common for it to be cotton. There is a skirt. This is what the women in Santa traditionally wear. This is actually woven on a machine, and then the color is bled in a tie-dye fashion.
You might want to hold it so you can get a picture.
So what the women and girls do, and the cutest thing ever, is to see girls fixing their skirts in public when they can tell, little ones, they can tell it's falling down. Pulls over to one side, here, goes around the back, which creates a flat in the back, so if there was something dirty, or your head is on the ground, you could pull that part back, but then it would be hidden. Pleat. So they pleat on the two sides. And then this is the faja, which is again woven on the backstrap loom. You can see that they only decorate one part and then leave the majority plain. So obviously you start to wrap with the plain section. And then it just wraps around. And then tucks. They just tuck underneath, and it just. Men will wear a woven piece, but it will be a short pants, and I have pictures of that over at the table, so you can look at it later. And then they would have like a collared shirt. The women also, to complete the dress, would have a ribbon wrapped up into their hair. In Santa, it's a rather thick, matronly looking ribbon, and it's actually quite heavy when you put it on. Now, as I said, you can tell where someone's from by what they're wearing. So this is Santa Catarina. This is an example of a different village. This is Panajachel. So you can see the colors are different. The style is slightly different. And then they traditionally wear a plainer bottom. So totally okay. Take this out too. Now, a woman would most likely have 4, maybe 5, but that's pushing it, different, basically, outfits. The women wear this all the time. With men, it's less and less common to see them in this traditional dress. Now, other items you might see for men their traditional bag, and it wouldn't be decorated this nicely, this was a gift, but for men, their traditional bag is a morale, which is like this, that they would just wear like that, and that's what they would have. Women tend to carry a type of napkin. It could be large, like the one I carried all my weaving things in, if it was for going to the market, or it could be small if they just were going to buy something small. This is woven in the same way. It doesn't have any designs on it. The color variation has just come from the way they arrange the strings. So these work in several ways. You can put things inside, obviously, to wrap up and carry. And so if that was the purpose, the woman probably just walks down carrying it like this. It's also common, especially in older women, for them to cover their heads at church with a piece like this. And then also because women carry items on their head, it also works to cushion whatever that item might be. So if you fold it and then take it and roll it, you can make a flat circular surface that when you put it, you sit on your head, it softens whatever you're carrying. So when we talk about weaving, this is the origin of any of the other pieces you'll see over at the table later. It all started with this as its purpose, even though it's been adapted to other things. I started learning how to weave last October. I actually used it as part of my master's thesis in teacher education, and so then after that, I was like, if I was going to use this in that work, then I should learn how to do it. So from the beginning, it looks a little bit like this. The women will buy the strings at the market in balls. Usually they're buying them by weight. And as I said, it's most common to either see wool, cotton, or a synthetic, I think it's a semi-synthetic fiber called aleman. The women, for the cost, tend to use cotton. It's the most comfortable and it's the middle of the road in terms of cost. The wool is heavier. It's cheap. It is the cheapest, but it's heavier. It knots up more, and it's not quite as easy for them to work with. The aleman is the most expensive, and it tends to be softer and break easier. And just by the pure fact that it's the most expensive, they tend to not use it as much. For the design strings, they may use the cotton strings, and they also may use the synthetic rolls that you'll see when I pull mine out. They remind you of embroidery kind of floss. So the woman will buy the string. She has to wash it to get the color to bleed out, so that when they wash the clothes the first time, it doesn't bleed out everywhere. Then what she'll do, this is the muñeca, and they use this after it's been washed to dry it and get it in an easier way to manage. Then they move on to the muñeca, which I'm sorry I spoke wrong. This is the carreta, and then the muñeca is the big, long wooden piece that you see with the dowel sticking up. So the woman will take the string in her hand, and she'll wrap it around the dowels according to the piece. So if she was making a faja, like the long belt that you saw, then she's going to wrap the full length, but only to one side so that it's skinny. A huipil is about through here. So she'll have the string in her hand and basically just kind of, figure eight around and around and around until it's the number that she wants. Then the sticks, the two sticks at the top and the bottom are inserted. I don't want to start here. So it'll look like this in the beginning. There's my balls of string you saw. This is the loom with nothing woven in it. You can see my the glossy strings from this weaving that I did. This actually became a blouse. There you can see it again. In the bottom, you can see the belt that will be wrapped around the woman. This is actually the woman who taught me, and her little baby. The strings get divided, so what you'll see when I pull mine out is that there's one stick that goes across with all these strings wrapped around it that have nothing to do with the design, but what that does is separate the groups of strings, because when you weave, and even anyone who's done it with paper, like in art class, which is the only thing I'd ever done before this, you know that it has to go over one, under one, over one, under one to lock in. So these, you can see the multicolored one right there behind her hands. What that does is they pick one and then drop one and pick one and drop one all the way across so that you have those two sets. Because if there wasn't the contradiction, then you wouldn't weave anything. After that, for the pictures, you have to divide one step further. So for one group of strings, you pick one, drop one all the way across to make one group. And then for the bottom set, you do the same thing. And they place 2 more sticks in, so that's what she's doing here. She's picking them across, and she puts the string in first to mark it. You can see her doing it with her hands. And then at the very bottom, she has a stick that she's working through after she's marked it with the strings. And there's she's doing. She's just, with that string she's just kind of pulling them up. She's using her fingers. They actually really get in there with their fingers. They're not shy about it. I was a little bit, nervous to really touch it a lot at first, thinking I was going to break it, but they, go right in and pull them up and get it all worked out. I have yet to do this myself. She did let me try the first time, and I kept missing strings, and it just was messing the whole thing up. So maybe when I go back the next time, I'll have gotten far enough in what I'm able to see that I could perhaps do this step that I haven't done yet. So there, now you can see these 2 right here that are the 2 main, this one main division, and then you can see 2 other sticks that divide, which you'll see better once I do mine. To keep it straight, there's a cane that is underneath with 2 nails in each side. One nail on each side, so there's 2 nails. And as you go, you just take it out and move it up, and take it out and move it up. And that's how they maintain a straight edge. Because most items are more than one piece. The big pieces of cloth that they use to carry things is usually, usually 2 pieces. The cloths that they use to carry babies in is usually 2 pieces that are sewn together later. The blouses are normally 3, 1 large center piece and 2 shoulder pieces. So what you have to do first is learn how to just weave it straight, just the smooth with no pictures. So that basically consists of 1, lifting the strings, and then 2, when the second step is you actually smooth and pull them together, and that's where the bottom ones come, which you'll see later. So this is what I'm doing here. You push with one hand and you pull with the other, and the set that you want comes up, and you make a shed, which is what it's called. I actually learned some weaving vocabulary a few weeks ago, which I had learned before. And the shuttle goes through that. So it'll start to weave together and look like that. I'm going to show you, take a quick break and show you the first items that I made. So this is, you'll be able to feel, this is actually wool. My friend thought, oh, she knits, she should make a scarf, I'll get her wool. Now, as I stated before, that is difficult to weave with, and I had a lot of knots come, and I was pulling, and it was not always a good scene. What it became instead of a scarf is basically a story of how this process went for me. So, as I mentioned with the lifting of the strings, that's actually the more difficult part, and when you look at the beginning of this, you'll see there are little, looks like gaps, and that's because when I was lifting, I couldn't lift it clean. So that piece was very difficult for me at first, and that's what you'll see. You'll also notice that the distance at the bottom is wider than at the top, because as I got better and was tamping it down more evenly, then they became narrower and more tightly woven. You'll also be able to notice the edge. When you put the shuttle through and you pull too hard, then it'll suck it in. If you don't pull enough, then it leaves kind of this loose gap, and so you can also see my struggle with that. And then, so this was an example if you don't lift the strings. Okay. From here, after I just got the basic motion of straight weaving down, she gave me a design that is used to help train your fingers and make them able to pluck through the strings. Many young girls have this already because of a style of bracelet they make, and that they have to like pluck through strings with their fingers. I didn't have that. So we made this design, we made a blouse out of it. It's 2 pieces. When you look closely at it, you'll be able to see kind of, you can see the little scrapes and, bad things that happen, but from a distance you can't, so that's the best part, right? At the end, the 2 pieces were sewn together. This is called kotoke, which actually is water for them. And this is the semi-synthetic textile, I believe, from my friends who know things about fibers. That's what I've been told. You can feel that it's softer, it's also lighter. And you can see that the strings are those glossy, kind of off the. So this is basically a zigzag pattern. You put all the strings in first. You can see them kind of cascade out. And the design builds upwards. So if you look at the top here, you don't see anything because the strings have just been put in. If you go down to the other corner, you can see how it starts to build up. So basically all it is you place the string in across, this was 3 strings, and every time you weave up 1 row, you just move over the direction. So I would shift 1 string to the right when I'm going in this direction, and shift 1 string to the left when I'm going in this direction. So here you can see I'm like plucking, going through the strings. And there, so it starts to get bigger. Usually this design is 4 repetitions. This is the center section where the head is. And then when you get to the point where you're going to stop, you peel the background strings apart and just slide the string you're using as the design through to the back. And then they all hang in the back like you can see on this side. At the end, they just get cut and they don't come out. It's not an issue. Sometimes if the people think that they're too short, they might knot them, but usually not. The glossier strings, they just leave a little bit longer tail on, but they all get cut just fine. And if you were to flip that blouse inside out, then you would see that there's just all the strings inside. So here, that's what I'm doing, is hiding the strings. You can see as I go across, these are hidden, and then these have yet to be hidden. So I'm basically just pulling them through the back. And this is just the design string with that one line, those lines that are across it. Okay. So you get up to the top, which actually starts to get really, really tight, and that can be more difficult. This is what it looks like when you sit in it, which you'll see later. It's tied up to the one end of something sturdy. Could be a tree, it could be a post, could be anything like that. And then the woman sits on the ground. Usually they sit on a mat like that or a cloth. There are also women who sit on their knees. You can do it in a chair also. I've seen people do it in a chair. So here was one of the pieces for that blouse. When you get up to the top, you just cut across. It's not a big deal. She didn't have a scissors to stay, so we borrowed a knife from the man who sells fruit next door, because I learned how to, she has a shoe store and I was weaving there. So, you just kind of, I was sitting in the loom at this time, and I just leaned back, a little bit of tension, and she just took the knife and went, comes right off. Doesn't come undone. And then, so I have all my little pieces of all the stuff, you know, there it came off, you can see it in my lap. And then it's just a matter of winding up all the pieces and saving them until the next time you put strings on them. But it is a random assortment of sticks, to be sure. And then, like I said, just snip the strings off the back, which is what happened with that. Yep. So there's, you know, the one and the first one on top of the second one that was being made. I actually got a little too confident because by the end of the second one, I was feeling pretty good about it, and I went faster, and I didn't actually weave it as tight, and that's why you can tell a little bit that the pictures are wider, like they don't quite match, because I didn't have the same consistency. After learning water, she taught me 3 new designs. So I made this kind of, I don't know, she called it, you know, just kind of a napkin that I could actually use to wrap stuff in. I think it's more decoration. But what it consists of are 3 other designs. These are bells, these are leaves, and these are water jugs. So the same kind of similar thing where you basically, you know, you start at one point and move out or in, depending. And actually when you're doing it, it makes sense what should come next as long as the other one is right next to it. You know, it's more difficult sometimes if you don't have them right next to each other, but as long as they're right next to each other, it makes sense which one should get smaller, which one should get bigger. And this is also a common color combination that they use, and it's called cake. So I thought that was interesting. And she gave me this belt to be looking at while I was doing it, just in case I forgot. That's a very common thing. They don't write any of these designs down. It's pretty much a matter of either you remember it, someone you know knows it, or you look back at previous work and they, you know, count how many times it's wrapped or how it's done, and then use that to recreate it. So here's water jugs, the leaves, the bells. This, because it actually was one long piece that we sewed together at the end, we placed a gap in it, which is more simple than I thought, because if you place any item inside the strings and then pass the shuttle and weave, it actually doesn't press all the way down, so it'll leave the gap wherever you want it and however large you want it to be. So we just left the gap and then cut it apart later to sew it. And then this is my friend Anastasia who made my repeal. Here's an example of one of them doing it. And you can see her repeal, the designs are similar but the colors are slightly different, but you can still see a similarity between, you know, what we both have and identify it as Santa. Her little sister actually has designs that you can probably identify as Santa, but they, you know, shifted with colors. They definitely use their clothing as a, you know, a fashion kind of a way to express themselves individually, and there's always things that are in fashion or, you know, coming in, coming out of fashion. The red actually has made a comeback and is more fashionable to wear on a daily basis, the original red. Another repeal that's fashionable for them is to do themes on one color, so like a purple background and then 5 different shades of purple for the designs. Or a green background and 5 different shades of green for the designs. And then they'll pick a corte that's all green, you know, so that's what they work at. So I think that's good for the PowerPoint, and now it'll probably make more sense when you actually see me do it.
So we'll
just lift the screen up a little bit.
put the screen up and move around so you've got a moment here. And then I also forgot to mention I've got a nice textile book that the library owns that I have on my desk. I forgot to bring it in. It shows you a lot more detail, and it's for anybody to check out. It's checked out to me now, but that thing changed. I have to check out. Also, the books on the far table are library books that, if you're interested, it tells more about Mayan and Guatemala culture and the history and so on if you're interested. So you can get those. Now I'll put this up.
Maybe while she's doing that, so this is kind of the step I've taken since, and that is to combine the figures that I know into actual things. So I've been using items that I have from the women to kind of look at it and figure it out. So for example, taking the zigzag or the water, and then you can use it, in the corn and also the top or the bottom of the bell. You can use it to make corn. The butterflies are just the zigzag again. The ducks are this. This is another style of butterfly. So again, the same. And then the cadre that you saw for organizing the string, this appears a lot. So it's just a matter of putting it together. I haven't learned these types of designs yet. This is actually the older type where it's kind of woven in, and then these kind of raised figures are a newer style.
Okay, we'll take a break and let you go ahead and set up.
Hook up the loom? Sure.
Yeah.
We're rolling.
Okay, so tie it to something sturdy. It's all rolled up, so it's really portable.
Around the side.
Oh, of course, yeah, come as close as you want. So it unrolls. Now this is the demonstration one. I'll show you the one I'm working on here. So it's like this. The belt goes around one of the sticks once, and then around both of them as many times as you need to get it comfortable and what you feel is tight. Oh, I still have, I forgot I had that in there, right, okay. So, like I said, you have first this stick with the strings that have separated your two groups. So, I mean, you can come as close as you want. So you can see, if you look close, that this will go around one and then leave one, and then it goes around a group and then it leaves a group. And it goes around a group and then it leaves a group. Even has some little knots on there. Then you also have the two that divide for the designs, and both of them were separated first with strings just to make sure, and then the stick was stuck in. And then the bottom one. And you have the other. Okay. So it has string. I already put the shuttle through, right? So this comes down over the top, and if you just shimmy it, then you get the design group. It comes up, and this goes in. Okay. So I showed some people, I had one of the zigzags on here that some people were trying before. Okay. So I'm going in this direction. Now you can see that here were the four, these are the four from the last one. Now to make it go in this direction, I just go one over. Okay, and then you just pull them up. And they just get wrapped like this. So same thing. If you want it to go straight, like these, then you go every other time. Because every other time, you'll have the same group again, and it'll go straight. So here's the 4, and I want to go over 1 for each one. So I go over and wrap it. Same thing.
How long does it take to do a piece like that for those who
Well,
are accomplished?
Right, I mean, and it depends on, like, for example, on this, kind of each picture section probably took me a couple hours, but I was also figuring it out as I went,
Sure.
so that's slower. Something that size, the women, probably the whole thing, they would do in like a week, and not, they don't weave all day. They, weave when they have time after other things are done. So something like this actually takes between 6 and 8 weeks.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Because of it's the 3 separate pieces. So it just, it depends on how hard the design is for the woman. It depends on how well she knows it. There's some things that they just whip out like that, certain items that maybe they sell, and then there's others that take longer. So after you have that in, then this is the lifting part. This is the part where I left strings all the time before. So this comes up, and this pushes down. And you can see that it makes the space. So this goes through. And then you can see that you can see it's going to come down and weave right there. So there it goes. So then you put the shuttle through again for string. Now I don't have a cane for this one, which is why it's all kind of like all over the place. So you pull down the one for the bottom set and shimmy it. Always helps do this, Right, so here it is. And then same thing, since I'm going in this direction, go over 1 for each one. Want to help? No? Oh, okay.
But she's going potty.
Do you want to take that string and put it around for me? Here you go, just take this. Get up. Can you push it through there? Push it right through here. There it goes. There it goes. Good job. Want to do another one? Okay. Can you push this one? Push it through there, just like you did before. There it goes. Good job. So the bottom, it's easier to weave it. I'd always get so tired in the beginning on the lifting part, but then the other one is easy. You just go like this. All you have to do, and I don't know why, is pull them together, and the shed opens again. It's so much easier on the other side. But there you can see they're coming. There. And that's how it goes. For the bells and things, if you want to, you just start with the number out. So, I can show you here. So you would have string. And every woman just has a bag full of string. I have anyway. So you just take these. Yeah. So the bells, depending on how if it's the wide or the short, if it's the narrow at the bottom, then they would just start with the 1. Otherwise, usually it's pick 1. Yeah. It's like pick 1, drop 2, pick 2, drop 2, 1. And in the beginning, it would be like this. So it's pretty much a matter if you want to add a new string, all you have to do is set it in there. But that's pretty much how it goes. Are there questions? I can take questions while I'm finishing up the row.
Remember any men that weave?
The men weave the larger items on the items that require a machine or like a larger structure. Men do that. So the corte, all the skirts, men make. But this type of weaving with the backstrap, no.
Have you seen the new seats? I've seen wooden ones
right,
that they made now,
to like-
especially they're more comfortable, or it's not necessarily ergonomic, but more comfortable for some of the women to use.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've also, because I work with this library project, have considered eyeglasses, are for especially for older women, are a big need because they start to not be able to see this. So I'm trying to work out a way to do some kind of project where we did an event for them in the library, and then at the end of the however long we did the program for, I would give them reading glasses. Because that's another, and you can tell sometimes my friend who taught me, she takes work from other women to sell in her store sometimes, and so she takes the older women's work, also, but you can tell like that they can't quite see it anymore.
I'm not clear what all of this is, what all the loops of string there.
Right. So that's, like I said, how in order to be able to go over one, under one, you have to have two separate groups. So if you look close at it, you can see that it leaves some out, and then, like, because you see there's a loop, this is a loop. Like it's looped around. So it leaves some and keeps some, leaves some, keeps some, so that across all the strings are actually divided so that it creates the over, under, over, under, over, under. Yeah. So you can see we wove this in, like this started. And like I said, if I wanted to go straight, then now this time I wouldn't do anything with it because it's not going to be the right set of strings to go straight. If I wanted to zigzag, then I could. See, so like right here now with this one that we put in, I don't have those two strings aren't there. So I can either, do something that will allow me to go to either side, or if it's going to be straight like this, then I don't do that this time. I leave it until it comes around again. So. You want to do another string? Okay. Here you go. There's that one too. Any other questions? Yeah, there. Get right through there. Oh, not up here. Down here. Down here. Right through there. Otherwise, feel free to, look and touch any other things. I have great examples of what the women have done at the table in the back. Also, a lot of pictures of the village.
Well, thank you.
Do you want to join
much.
us?
You got a good little helper there.
I know. Push right through there. Push right through there. There you go. Thank you. One more? Can you do one more? Push it through. Right through there. Be so careful. Yeah. There, it's coming. There. Thank you.
So do they ever dye their own string, or is it all purchased?
The women that I worked with, I've only ever seen them purchase it. And it, until I was, was kind of talking about and doing these demonstrations, it never really occurred to me to ask them where they were necessarily where it was coming from. What I suspect is that now there are probably groups of women who do just that part. You know, like because there have been organizations that have gone through and, you know, created like microcredit or co-ops or things with women. What I would imagine is that there's probably a co-op or, you know, a smaller type of organization that what they do is they make the string and then everybody else just buys. You know,
So I was down in Chile and they use actual looms, but you know, I was up in some of the mountain villages there, and they would come out there all pack it and dye their own and make it from there and everything.
yeah. And I mean, I would
But
have.
then there were, they would use natural dyes or not natural dyes.
Right. No, I know some of this is, and then some of it isn't. You
Yeah.
know, like it depends on, you know, which string it is
Yeah.
too.